It's Saturday, July 12th. I'm Ali Velshi. A federal judge has temporarily blocked the Trump administration from carrying out indiscriminate ICE sweeps in the Los Angeles area. The district court judge wrote that roving patrols without reasonable suspicion violate the Fourth Amendment, and denying detainees access to lawyers violates the Fifth Amendment. The judge added that there is a mountain of evidence that ICE agents have been arresting people based solely on race, accent, or the work that they're doing, directly violating constitutional principles. Yet, she wrote, quote, the federal government would have this court believe, in the face of a mountain of evidence presented in this case, that none of this is actually happening, end quote. The ruling came just hours after President Trump's border czar, Tom Homan, told Fox News that ICE officers don't need probable cause to question or detain civilians. They can just do it based on their physical appearance, end quote. Based on their physical appearance, which, if you know even the basics of American law, is flatly wrong. And if the person in charge of immigration enforcement doesn't know that, or worse, doesn't care, we are in very serious trouble. All of this contributes to growing fears that ICE is no longer just an immigration agency, but is being turned into a kind of secret police to do the Trump administration's bidding. Under Trump's reconciliation bill signed on July 4th, ICE is set to surpass the FBI in size and power, with a budget larger than some national militaries. It will become America's largest domestic police force, running its own network of detention centers, staffed by tens of thousands of agents, hired quickly, with far less training and oversight than traditional federal officers. There's a method to all of this. It's proving rather challenging to bend the FBI to one man's will, and turning the military inward on civilians would face legal barriers and public outrage, like we saw when the Marines and the National Guard were deployed to intimidate protesters in L.A. What Trump can do, and what he is doing, is building up ICE into this alternative force that is bigger, more politically loyal, unencumbered by standards, and largely shielded from democratic accountability. As Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez warned after the passage of the Republican mega bill, quote, it is setting up to make what's happening now look like child's play, end quote. And as ICE expands, it's adopting tactics that we normally associate with authoritarian regimes: masked agents refusing to identify themselves, secret raids without warrants, people thrown into unmarked vans and moved covertly so they can be denied due process and deported faster. And of course, surveillance for political speech. Surveillance for political speech. According to Bulwark editor Jonathan V. Last, quote, within months, ICE will have twice as many agents as the FBI, as its masked and ununiformed officers continue to snatch people off the streets and mete out violence as they see fit. What do you think is going to happen? End quote. The mask policy alone tells the story. ICE agents now routinely carry out raids in plain clothes and face coverings, refusing to show badges or IDs. Critics say it's a deliberate move to evade accountability as outrage grows. By law, federal officers must identify themselves, quote, as soon as it is practical and safe to do so, end quote. Local police face real threats every single day, yet still, with certain very, very specific exceptions, they wear badges and nameplates, and sometimes have body cameras, because transparency is not just a formality, it's actually a fundamental check on the abuse of power. And under Trump, hiring standards are likely to collapse. ICE plans to add 10,000 new agents in just a few years, a surge that is reminiscent of the post-9/11 Border Patrol hiring spree. The journalist Garrett Graff, who documented that era, warns law enforcement always regrets hiring quickly. And as he points out, if due process were truly the goal here, the administration would be hiring more immigration judges, not just enforcement agents. The fact that it isn't makes the intention clear. Due process is not the goal. And we know ICE is already targeting people not just for suspected criminal activity, but for political speech that it labels as a potential national security threat. Just months ago, ICE arrested pro-Palestinian activists, students, and legal residents, claiming that their presence had adverse foreign policy consequences. That's the word of the Secretary of State. Legal experts called it retaliation against protected speech. But put it all together. ICE now checks nearly every box of a secret police force, targeting dissent, operating in secrecy, surveilling ordinary citizens, and detaining people outside of judicial oversight. Except it's all happening in broad daylight. As The Guardian columnist Judith Levine warns, quote, when it runs out of brown and black people to deport, ICE, perhaps under another name, will be left with the authority and capability to surveil, seize, and disappear anyone the administration considers undesirable, end quote. Indeed, once you normalize masked officers detaining people without warrants and surveilling political speech, the next step, using those same tools against critics and political opponents, becomes really easy. With ICE's rapid transformation, we're witnessing a police state taking shape before our eyes, built to operate outside the reach of voters, courts, or the Constitution. Just look at what happened recently in a New York City park. After more than 20 years of coaching kids baseball, Yeoman Wilder saw ICE agents approach players during practice, asking where they were from. When the coach stepped in, telling the kids not to answer and calling the questions inappropriate, the agents backed off. Which raises the chilling question, why are ICE agents knowingly operating outside the law, and why are they doing it to children? Policing in a democracy is not supposed to be about raw power. Officers wear badges and uniforms to show that they serve the law and the public, not one man and not one party. As Garrett Graff notes, quote, that ICE has gone so quickly to masked operations in unmarked vehicles with no clear law enforcement identification makes clear how unhealthy and fundamentally undemocratic its core culture now is, end quote. In parts of the Middle East, there's a word for this terrifying force, the mukhabarat. It's Arabic shorthand for secret police, but it means much more than that. For people who live under these regimes, the mukhabarat represents the suffocating power of a state that sees everything, knows everything, and punishes without warning. It's a word that carries fear, paranoia, and repression. And it should remind us here why in our democracy, no police force should ever be allowed to operate in the shadows. And that's what makes this moment so dangerous. We're not just debating immigration policy. We're watching a police state take shape, funded by our tax dollars, justified by fear-mongering, built to operate outside the reach of Congress, the public, or the Constitution itself.